all here, so let's begin. So I'd like to call to order this Township of Wainfleet Council meeting, April 28th, 2020. And I would like to start with the land acknowledgement statement. And we would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people, acknowledging the One Bowl and Spoon Treaty. And now I'll look to see if there's any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Okay, seeing none. Mayor's remarks. Every year on April 28th, we pay our respects to and remember the thousands of workers who have been killed, injured, or suffered illness as a result of work-related incidents. We also honor the many families and friends who have been deeply affected by these tragedies. Every worker has the right to return home safe and sound at the end of each workday. By working together with staff and our health and safety partners, we can prevent work injuries and deaths before they occur. And I would just like to take a few moments of silence just to think about that for a minute here before we carry on. So a couple of minutes of moments of silence, please. Okay, thank you. So we're going to move into staff reports and recommendations here, and this is a special meeting that we've called to further discuss budget issues. What we're going to do to keep it organized, because it is an official meeting, is we'll ask that you please raise your hand when you have a question. I know it's a little bit harder, but it's the way we decided to do it, and that way it doesn't become a free-for-all. So when you have a question, raise your hand and then we'll work through it. And it doesn't work too bad. We did it with 50 plus people on the region the other day and it didn't work too bad. So, okay, so ASR 12-2020 regarding COVID-19 impact report. And we received that on the 21st regular meeting here just a week ago. At the last meetings of council members considered a report reviewing the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on the township. The report was received by council and discussions included a review of both, excuse me, of both townships' approved operating and capital budgets and the manner in which the pandemic emergency was impacting the implementation of those budgets. Following the meeting, a number of members of council requested an additional opportunity to further discuss one of the 2020 items, that is the new fire hall project. I should also note that the notice of this meeting was provided through our regular channels on Friday, and that staff have zoomed into the meeting and are available to respond to any questions that you may have. At this time, I'd like to open the floor to members of council, and I would like to, Councilor Cridland, if you would like to begin, because I knew you had some questions, so we can start with you if you wish.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you for calling the special meeting. You're right around the, just zeroing in on the, what's happening to all of us, obviously, with COVID, but our biggest item is the fire hall. So we see now that it is in an orange zone on our report. Again, an excellent report. And it's really just to explore, are there things that we should consider now in light of what we know and what we don't know, and to explore the idea of basically a phased approach for the fire hall, and thereby still continuing forward. So my effort would be to make sure it continues to move forward in some scale. And I think with that, that's the intention, making sure that nothing is compromised in terms of firefighter safety, and also our requirements that we know for sure are to protect the vehicles as well. So that pretty much just sets the stage for us to explore perhaps a phased option.
Okay, who else would like to? Councilor MacLellan.
Yes, sir. So in light of that, I've done a little investigating, had some of our guys work out some numbers. If we were to build the garage part and carry it at 2 stories over another So instead of 70 feet, we go to 100 feet by 86, which would give us 8,600 square feet. And we put a second story on the part. We would get the bunker gear, we would get the washrooms, we'd have some room upstairs for additional. We put together some numbers, and I am confident that we can get this done with the parking lot, the septic beds, the services coming in for under the $2 million mark. And personally, I don't want to see the town go into any more debt than that at this point. And, you know, if it's a phased approach, if we do this, yes, maybe to add on the next time, it might cost us an extra 100 grand, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. And, you know, we can add this on. If it comes up in 2 years' time or 3 years, we can get it done. But we bought a piece of property. We've been talking about it. This is something we can put a shovel in the ground probably before this fall if everything works out right, and we get the firefighters what they need, and we don't go broke. So that's my 2 cents on it. But
Okay, I'm not seeing everybody on the screen, so on the, if there's anybody over on staff on my other screen there, you'll have to speak up just if you want to get involved. So I'm only seeing 9 people here at a time. Who would like to comment? Any more comments on that? You're Councilor MacLellan, you're speaking about a second floor fire hall as opposed to all in one level?
no, so we would have the garage or exactly the way it's drawn up right now, and then add, so that shows that it's 70 feet by 86 feet is what's on the current drawing. If we added another 30 feet, that we would put in a clean wall at the 70 feet. So it would be an airtight wall. Then we would have 30 feet so we could put in washrooms. So if we go to a 2-story high unit, then we can have a small office downstairs, the wash, everything, a set of stairs to get us upstairs. And then upstairs, you can put a couple more of these training rooms or whatever we need on the second floor. But it gets us what the firefighters need immediately, and the rest of it we can, if this all blows over and comes through. But I mean, I've had conversations with the city of Welland. City of Welland has laid off 111 workers over this. They are worried about work. They're worried about things getting together. They're worried about money, and if they're worried, then we should really be worried. And because they've got better industries and everything else, so we. You know, I'm looking at this and saying, hey, if we can do this for under the $2 million mark, that's not bad. We put 800,000 or 850,000 into it aside last year for this, so we're maybe halfway paid. And you know, my other thought is, you know, we put 30,000 this year into the recoup that barn. Maybe we don't do anything with that barn and let's get the building built. And if the barn has to wait a year or two, well, let's do that, but let's try and get the guys what they need.
Okay, other comments, please? Councilor Gilmore?
Yeah, for me, this is still about the long-term debenture carry. Like I've said before in a number of meetings that 5 point anything is not a good starting point. 4 isn't, 3 isn't, somewhere in the 2s is.
Okay, I've lost him. Is everybody else lost?
He froze up on me.
He froze up.
Okay, he's still frozen. Well, hang on for a second till he unthaws here.
Mr. Mayor, through you, perhaps staff could turn off their video, and that might free up some bandwidth on the councillor's phone.
Okay. Councilor Gilmore, if you can hear us, we haven't heard you for probably 20, 30 seconds now. You guys you heard me there, eh?
Yep.
Yeah, we
Okay.
can hear you, Mayor.
You want to give him a phone call, Will, please?
Will do. Councilor Gilmore is just rebooting his computer and he will be joining us shortly.
Okay, well, we'll just hang on because it's important that we're all involved in this. Do you still have them on the phone, Will?
Through Mr. Mayor, no, I don't. I sort of let him go so that I could get some other text just to make sure he can get in on this end.
Yep, there he is. And okay, you're back with us, Councilor Gilmore. So
All right, so anyway, yeah, so debenture carry is a big problem, not only for us for the rest of this term, but I'm not about to tie the hands of the future councils to have to start at 3, 4, 5, whatever every year. It's just not doable. And I'm also not at all optimistic about the ability of any current higher level of government to provide much of any funding. And even if they do, we've still got a long list of projects that could happen. But like all levels have already bet the farm 100 times over. They never had any money when they started, and they have even less now. And even if they do throw a bunch of money at the infrastructure of everywhere, it's the wrong thing to do. So I'm just not optimistic that is remotely anything that we should hang our hat on. So when I got wind of this idea of doing it on a smaller scale, and then all the ramifications that come out of that, which would free up a lot of space at the current station 2, which has to be renovated anyway, to the tune of, who knows, 2, 3, maybe 400,000 to renovate that building. It's just not possible to do anything that's going to start with a 3 or a 4. I don't think, and it would be the wrong thing to do if we did do that. So that's I still haven't heard what the percentage is. The only number I'm aware of is 5.8 something or 5.6 something, which is just which is not happening as far as I'm concerned. So personally, I think this is about all we can and should afford to do, and we need to know. I want to know what the debenture carry number is going to be, even on 2 million, and that number needs to start with a 2, or else I'm not going to be coming alongside of that project either, because we just, and really this has nothing to do with COVID or anything, because as I said, before all this started, all other levels of government still had nothing. They have less than nothing. And so, and we're the only people that have something because we're mandated to have something. And it's going to stay that way as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Van Vliet.
I like the idea that we're discussing about phasing it in. I think, as Councilor Gilmore said, 5 million is a big number. And now that I've wrapped my head around it, Councilor MacLellan, you're talking about phasing it in from, let's say, the west wall to where the hall is in the diagram, right? In the draft plan.
Yes.
Okay.
So
So you
you would build the barn or the garage
a garage.
and all of that. And then from there, where the wall is and it shows the building getting narrower, we would just keep the same width or depth. Add it, go from 70 feet to 100 feet. And that would be 2 stories, that 25 feet or so, that would get us up to 2 stories by 86. So it's going to be somewhere around 4,000 square feet of, some of that will be office space, some of that will be part of the washrooms that are in there. It's already included. I basically just drew a line at the 100-foot mark and said, okay, we'll cut that off there.
Okay, so if we do that, we move for now, because if we're not going to do the whole project, we move the training facilities, the emergency center, all of that over to existing station 2 after it's been renovated. Because we're going to free up all that room where the bays were for the trucks and whatnot, correct?
So my thought on that, and it's only my thought, so if we build the new fire hall at the phased in section, we do that. The old fire hall, as far as I'm concerned, if we're going to do anything, we got it to the bare wall. We make sure the building is structurally sound. We got it to the bare walls, and then we rebuild it internally. If it needs a new roof, put a brand new roof on now, and then we have a building that may be 60 or 70 or 100 years old, but it'll be all new inside. It'll have new electrical, it'll have new heating, it'll have high efficiency, good insulation, high efficiency. And yes, that may cost us somewhere between $200,000 and $400,000, depending on how fancy and what we want to do. But now we have space for the firefighters. If phase 2 of the fire hall goes on, that now becomes space for town hall employees because it's that close. And if the town grows, we're going to need space. And the next thing will be trying to build the town hall. So this way we kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone in about 3 steps.
If I could continue. My only concern is the safety for our firefighters. As long as their bunker gear is there in one space, they can be showered and cleaned in one space, and the gear can be cleaned and decontaminated all in the space. That would be the brand new building.
That's all included in there right now. I left all of that, right? And what I did doesn't mean this is gospel of what we have to do. It's a starting point, right? I just looked at it and said, man, I don't think we can afford this. And I see what's coming in the private end, and we're all panicking. I just don't see the cash flow coming to the municipalities.
I see.
Okay, thank you for that. So I'm going to jump in there too. I agree with everything that's been said. I mean, this has to be financially manageable. If I recall, I remember our fire chief saying that there were like 4 or 5 trucks that need to be replaced as well in the next 4, 5, 6 years. And we all know that they're very expensive. A phased-in approach is probably a good approach. And was it, if we did like $4.5 million on the fire hall, we would start our tax increase at what, 5.5% starting. So Councilor Gilmore, in my opinion, is correct. We don't want to burden the future taxpayers forever. The flip side to the whole debate, of course, is we do need a new fire hall because the trucks are getting, bigger, or existing fire halls are not adequate. And so we have to find a common ground in the middle of between what we can afford and not burden the future residents too much, but that will serve as, adequate fire facilities for, 50 years, 60 years more to come. So anyone else like to comment on that? I'd like to go to the chief too, to get his opinion there. Bearing in mind that, a deluxe nice fire hall is great, but when you really get down to brass tacks, we have to be able to afford it and to still carry the township forward in the future. So look to the chief, please. Chief, are you on there?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to get myself muted here. I'm sitting here listening, and I certainly I understand everything that's being said, and I 100% agree. I guess my biggest fear is that there's always been kind of a, how do I phrase this? A half approach, always kind of a phased in, never really doing it right the first time. Certainly, if you look at some of the used trucks that have been purchased over the years, if you look at some of the attempted renovations, and I feel like this may just be putting bad money before bad money. And I think at this point, do I really want to see us making a 75-year decision during a pandemic? No, I would rather us just take the pause, take some time, see how this all plays out, and maybe resume play in September and see where we come out from there.
Okay, thank you. Other comments on that? Councilor MacLellan?
Yeah, so I'm not looking at this as a half approach. I'm not looking at this as a way to diss the firefighters or anything of that. Morgan, I don't believe September is going to do it. I don't believe that by the end of our term we'll know what's the outcome of this. And from everybody I've listened to and all of the businessmen I've spoken to, nobody knows what's going to come of this. And the way our government is printing money, they're going to run out of brown ink before this is done. And you have a council that wants to build this right now. And from everything I just heard from the five of us, we have the backbone to go at this. If we can keep it at the $2 million mark or slightly under that. You may never get this again if this pandemic goes on, because if you don't get the same council back there, they may not have the backbone to go after this. I'm not saying, that I'm trying to do anything. I've said for years, they've treated our fire department like redheaded stepkids over the last 40 years. I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to make sure they get everything they need, but there isn't going to be a lot of fluff in it. It's going to be the building. It's going to give them the change rooms. It's going to give them the washrooms. It's going to give them the clothes washers. It's going to give them all that. But all that extra room that was in there, I don't think we can afford it right now. And that's just, it's what I've just heard from everybody. And really, I would be happy to sit down and maybe we can get yourself and Sean and, maybe Richard and Terry and sit down and try and come up with this and then hire a consultant to write the specs for it. It might cost us $15,000 or $20,000 to get somebody to write up the specs, and let's get it built. Right? Let's get this done. You guys need it. And from what I just heard, everybody's on board to spend at least that much money, not anymore.
Okay, any other comments? Councilor Gilmore?
Let me just repeat again. This has nothing to do with COVID or any pandemic or anything. It's all about the numbers, and the numbers don't lie. 5.6 is not a number that's going to work. I don't know how many times I've said it. I'll keep saying it until we all get our heads around the fact that 5 point anything is not a figure that's going to work. It's got nothing to do with making decisions in a pandemic. If we didn't have a pandemic, I'm still on the same page, and I've been on that page for some time. So I just want to be clear. What John said is completely accurate. And Morgan is correct, because we have done things in the past that have been a little bit half-baked for reasons that, you know, I don't know about. I wasn't involved, but we're not making those decisions now. But we're not tying our hands in the hands of our future for more space than we need at the moment. I mean, this is going to be a big building, and it's going to, and it can be expanded down the road. I mean, that's why it needs to be drawn up, and the footprint needs to be accurate, and it has to be put on the right spot in the lot. And if EMS wants to come to the party, well, they can go on one side and we'll carry on. But this is all about fiscal responsibility for me, and nothing else other than that.
Okay, Councilor Van Vliet.
I just have a quick question. Does anybody know the original figure that was budgeted years ago for a new fire hall,
In the last term,
or the term before? Well, the last term.
yeah.
ballpark.
Well, I mean, I can answer what we batted around. Mind you, it's not apples to apples, because we were talking about building at Burnaby. This is before we got the land. So the, you know, the plan changed when we were able to acquire enough space in Chambers Corners. But I mean, at the time, I believe we had set an upset limit of, if I remember right, either 1.6 or 1.8, but we never got beyond the talk of it because we didn't get around to getting anything done before the election, and then it all changed when we were able to buy that adjacent property. So it's not really relevant what we talked about in the previous term. It wasn't in the same site. It's just not relevant.
Okay, any other comments there, Chief? Anything?
No, not at this time.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is things that I agree with. You know, my thing, and people talk to me, and it was all about somewhat to the point of the chief of that we build a decent fire hall that's good for, you know, decades and decades, so that we make a smart move and do it. But that hits quickly against the reality of how many dollars are in the bank and what's the ability to pay. So somewhere in there is a perfect balance point of a fire hall that will work, is big enough, will handle our new fire trucks and all that sort of thing, and is affordable, that, you know, we can manage. So we just have to find that point, that balance point. And once we find that balance point, we're away to the races, in my opinion. I really, really like the idea that we build a building that, if need be, can be added onto, you know, and it's designed in that way so that it can be added onto if need be. So 10 or 15 years down the road, or 20 years down the road, all of a sudden we need more space, then the plan is there and it can be added onto. That's a smart design, and that's how we should look at that. So I think Councilor MacLellan made the point about a few getting together, like yourself with the chief and Richard and Will, and I think that's probably the best thing that we should do right now. And Councilor Gilmore's point is right on. I mean, you know, all the levels of government said they had no money before, and they're spending, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars here like crazy. So, you know, will there be money forthcoming? Not likely. Perhaps a little bit of incentive money, but I don't think it would be very much. Who knows how long this impact is going to have on COVID in regards to available dollars and grants and all that sort of thing. So I think that personally, I think that our standard of living is going to get very expensive in the future, as we have to pay for more things. And I think that we don't want to have a heavy debt load more than we have to. The bottom line here is that we provide adequate fire service to the residents of Wainfleet, that we provide adequate and proper safety to our firefighters to meet modern day accepted standards for cancer and all that sort of thing. Those two things are what we have to look at, and if we can do that and find the balance point to build a good building, I think that that's what we will end up having to do. And, you know, these are unprecedented times. I hate saying that all the time, but it's so true. There is no roadmap down the road here where we're going and how things are going to flow. So we do need to be careful with our money. And all the points I'm hearing are valid. So any other comments here? Councillor Cridland, did you have anything more?
No, thank you. I just appreciate that we've been having this discussion at this point. So, you know, seeing it go from orange to blue on our COVID report would be a great outcome after, you know, the next couple meetings.
Okay. Anything else? That's it.
Well, where am I here?
Councillor Gilmore?
So I think that what we need to do is request a staff report, which needs to include the debenture carry number for both $2 million and possibly another $500,000, up to $500,000 to renovate Station 2, so that then we'll know what the cost of building the fire hall is, because vacating Station 2 has a cost. I mean, the option, I guess you could tear it down, but I don't see that being valid. So, but I've still been waiting for some other figure other than 5 point anything, and I haven't got that number yet. So until we have that number, then we're still just talking. So basically, and I don't know whether you want to strike a committee to of some of us, and as John alluded to, and to try to push this forward. We can do that, but the first thing that, as far as I'm concerned, I need to know is what that percentage number is, and then we can press on from there.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so that's where I was headed, was the smart thing is to strike a committee and to hammer out the finer details of how this is going to move forward, exactly how much we can afford, and hopefully get to a resolution that everybody can accept. And I know it's it's not the fire hall that we all looked at, but we do have to live within our means. So I mean, that's just the bottom line, especially when there's other expenses coming down the pipe, and who knows how many more. So Will, can we strike that committee? How do we go about doing that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, probably the best thing that you could do is to pass a motion this evening that is proposing the establishment of a committee to look at the new fire hall project. If you could identify the composition of the committee from amongst yourselves and staff. Staff will be there as a sort of support position more than anything else, but we're there to assist. And then with that committee, we can develop some of the stuff or respond to some of the concerns that have been raised, for example, this evening, and come back to council with a formal report or reports, depending on how things play out regarding where things can go.
Okay, so would somebody like to make that motion, please? Councilor Van Vliet is making that motion to strike the committee. Do I have a seconder for that? Councilor MacLellan, sorry.
Close enough.
Any other discussion on that? And we'll appoint the names after we vote on striking the committee. So all in favor of the striking that committee? Hands up. Okay, so that is carried. Okay, so now.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, we need to do a recorded vote on that.
Oh, right. Yes, we're on Zoom. Okay, Councilor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councilor Gilmore.
In favor?
Councilor MacLellan.
In favor.
And Councilor Cridland.
In favor.
Okay, and I'm in favor. That is carried. Okay, so now we'd like to strike the names for the committee. So who would, I think Councilor MacLellan would like to be on that committee, I'm guessing, since it was his idea and how that's going to work. Is that correct?
Sure, thank you.
Okay, who else would like to volunteer to be on that committee? We'll look for the chief, of course, needs to be on there. I don't know whether our treasurer should be on there, maybe not. Wouldn't hurt. Sure, okay. Put the treasurer on there. So is anybody else? Maybe the deputy chief as well? Or just one or two?
Actually, I would say put both in case one isn't there. We have a representative from the fire department.
Yeah. Okay. Is anyone else wish to be on that committee?
Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that the manager of operations be on it as
All right,
well.
Richard. Yeah, Richard Nan should be on there as well. So that's
Yeah.
Richard, the chief, the deputy chief, Councilor MacLellan, and our treasurer.
Can we get
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Can we get Councilor Gilmore to?
Well, I'm
Yeah, I can
watching
be-
him. He's not putting his hand
Well,
up yet.
I can be on it. I was just waiting to see if any of my colleagues would. I don't.
Well, we probably all want to be on it, but that's too many opinions.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be on it unless one of you two would like to be, or the mayor. I mean, I guess, we're just going to bounce some ideas around and it's coming back to all of us anyway. So.
Yeah, I'd like to.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think Councilor Gilmore would be good on there. I'd really like to, like Councilor MacLellan said, I'd like to get this thing solidified sooner or later. We're still going to be months down the road. So if we can move it forward and get to the point where we know what it's going to cost and know what kind of building we have, the chief and the deputy also have their input into it, and we get a building built that is adequate for all needs for decades to come. So that's what I'd like to see come out of this fairly soon. I mean, this is taking quite a while already. Okay, so that's the committee then, Councilor MacLellan.
So the only thing is, I would like to do this kind of quickly if we can get this in, because if this COVID and everything starts as slow as it is, we might get some fantastic numbers on buildings, because this,
Yeah.
I think, would qualify for an essential service building, and we can generate some work here for people.
Okay. I'm just going to throw this out here because looking at the problem from every angle, is there a appetite potential for it to just even sit for 3-4 months to see how the pandemic pans out, and if there's any changes in available dollars, that sort of thing? Is there any appetite for that or thoughts on that? No? Councilor
No.
Gilmore?
I'll just say again, it's like pushing cooked spaghetti up a hill. Those dollars are just not coming. So let's just get our heads around the fact that that's not going to happen. All I'm really concerned about, and I think we need this information before the committee sits down, is again, debenture carry number on 2 million, number on 2.5 million. And I need that percentage before I can make any rational decision. So that should be able to get done fairly soon.
All right. So Councilor Cridland?
Thank you. Again, as through you, Mayor, again, the talk about debentures, we are in, it is unknown. There's some unknown pieces that, this discussion helps us with another plan to go forward. So our thoughts today, my thoughts today is to still go forward. We're seeing that decisions are being made for us, but at least we have a plan still to go forward and meet our basic requirements. But I mean, we may reach out for debentures and there are no debentures. We may reach out for lines of credit and there aren't, like, things, if they tighten up, we don't know. So again, if we, if after we see some ability to do this more on our own, we'll know when we see this if it's still the next right step. But we're all realizing these things are changing quickly. So I think as of today, we've got a new plan that keeps this moving forward. I think that's my goal.
Okay, thank you. Any final comments? I guess I'll look to the clerk to organize that committee meeting. How's that work, Meredith? Or Will?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, prior to actually doing the arranging for the meeting, we've sort of identified all the people to sit, but we really should pass a motion saying those are the people on the committee. Again, I think Councilor MacLellan, Councilor Gilmore, I heard potentially the mayor also on that committee. No? Okay.
It can be, but no need to. We got two good councilors there.
Then just the two members of council, and then the staff indicated the treasurer, the chief, the deputy chief, and the manager of operations. And that will be sort of the committee. And if all members of council are okay, perhaps we could get a mover and a seconder to get that on the floor, vote for that. And that will formally, we struck the committee, now we've populated the committee, and now then we can direct the committee to proceed and report back to the next available meeting or whatever the case might be with the information. And the clerk will coordinate some intermediary meetings with the committee and get us moving towards reporting back to council as a whole.
Okay, so can I have a mover on that as a motion, please? Councilor Cridland. Seconder on that is Councilor Van Vliet. Okay, we do a recorded vote. Councilor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councilor Gilmore.
In favor?
Councilor MacLellan.
In favor?
And Councilor Cridland.
In favor?
Okay, so that motion is carried. So we look to the clerk then to get that organized and start that committee up. And we'll look for them to do a report back to regular council as first opportunity that they have to do that. So is there anything else?
I don't know.
Councilor Gilmore.
Okay, through you, Mayor, to William. So when can we expect a sort of a ballpark rough financial plan based on those numbers that I've talked about 2 or 3 times already? You know, taking into consideration current reserves that are set aside for the project, current debenture interest, that kind of thing. When could we, I mean, I'm not going to hold you to it, but I just need to know some kind of percentage number sooner than later.
Perhaps Mr. Mayor, through you, perhaps the treasurer can speak to that.
Look to the treasurer, please.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council. So just a couple of things to kind of make sure everyone's on the same page, leaving this meeting and expectations for coming into the next meeting. The 5.86 number that Councilor Gilmore's been throwing around this evening, that was for the total debenture costs that we were presenting with the capital budget, which also included the Gents Road, the Gents Bridge, which was removed from the budget, so that the number that is associated with the fire hall was the 4.3%, which again, as discussed during budget, that wasn't going to be experienced in one taxation year. So just so you guys know what that number is, kind of leaving this meeting. And in terms of the 2 million, with the percentage for this year, it's 1.94. 2 million is about 115,000 a year in debenture costs, and 2.5 is about 143.5 per year, which is about a 2.42%. And again, that's on our percentage point of 59,296, which was the 2020 figure, which as assessment values increase, that number also increases what our 1% tax levy is equal to. So yeah, so now you have those numbers. We can come back with a formal report supporting those numbers. I just wanted to make sure that you guys had the numbers, because it does kind of sound like we're headed back to 2017 here. It sounds like we're 2 steps forward and now we're kind of pulling back. So there is strategies that we can do to kind of incorporate the debenture figures into the budget without a one-time impact. And also the debenture would be either for 25 or 30 years, and we're looking to phase it in to kind of get some of it off the books sooner than later, but to keep it affordable. So there is options there in terms of that as well.
Okay, thank you, Mallory. Any questions on that? Okay, any other comments or any other discussion here before we end our meeting? Okay, I don't see any. So thank you, everybody. We'll work on that, try to move that forward, and we'll look forward to the report that's going to come back on that with some hard numbers and some engineering ideas, some floor plan stuff, and see if we can't get this building moving forward. So okay, so if there's no other discussion or questions, if there's no opposition to this meeting being adjourned, I will adjourn this meeting. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.